This is Andi Purewal for Boxing News. I'm joined by Frank Smith, promoter Frank Smith, now here in Nottingham. Frank, how you doing?
I've been a promoter for a lot. I've had a licence for a long time, but I don't use it. I let Eddie have be the face. I'm good, mate. How are you?
I'm good, Frank. I actually didn't know you had your promoter's licence either.
I've had one for many years. I've had a licence in a load of American states for years. I've got a promotional licence in Uzbekistan. All of these global destinations. I've got my promotional licence.
How many's Eddie got?
Less than me, actually. Yeah. No, I am a promoter on a lot of them. But I don't tell anyone.
Frank, on that note, not fancy the warmer climate, I assume warmer climate of Las Vegas for Pacheco-Nelson?
We flicked a coin. No, look, I love Nottingham. I love the rain in January. I love being in the UK. I love being at home for a bit. I haven't travelled for 4 weeks. It feels very strange, but it's nice to be home for a bit. We split things up. Obviously, Eddie's out in Vegas. I'm delighted to be here. Dalton Smith's someone I've worked closely with over the years. We all have different relationships with different fighters, but he's someone I've really worked closely with and been behind sort of the journey and helping push that. So it's good to be here as part of that and see him win that European belt on Saturday night and move on from there.
Just one more on the cross-dual promotion, if you will. Some people look at it and think, why have the same show, sorry, not the same show, but why as a promoter have two shows on across different sides of the Atlantic, meaning that two superstars, two guys you think will eventually become world champions, will only have one of Eddie's attention, if you will. What was the thinking behind doing the show on the same day?
Look, for us, it's about showing we're a global powerhouse in boxing. We promote shows week in, week out. It's hard always as well to find dates that work for every show. Sometimes things, whether it be venues, whether it be availability for opponents, work out like this. At the same time, as much as I will joke about Eddie being a star, he is obviously a big face and a big powerhouse. We've obviously got a massive profile as a business ourselves as well that push the fighters. So we've got to, as we grow, as we continue to build as a company, as we're doing events all over the place, we've got to build, the matchroom part of it. That's the focus. And the fighters, we want to keep them active. So it's not about individual personalities. Or Eddie's not here, let's not do a show. It's got to be about putting on the best possible fights and the best nights, and whenever that makes sense. And for DAZN, it's about showing they are the global home of boxing. 12 hours of live boxing, start at 5 p.m. all the way through to 5 a.m. Some of the best stars in boxing on the platform. It's exciting times.
You doing that marathon like the hardcores of us, Frank?
Yeah, I will. After the show in Nottingham, I'm getting straight in the car and I'm going to watch the show as I drive back home, and I watch it all the way home.
Let's just start off with Pacheco-Nelson. Your thoughts on that fight, and I just want to get an understanding with why the Christian Mbilli fight never came off in the end.
We were in a position where the Nelson fight had basically been made as well. When the Mbilli fight had come up, and there was the dates and a lot of things didn't really play into suit with everything. Being honest with you, we'd made that fight when the order came in. Diego's also already mandatory with the WBO. He's number one position there. So, and I think there's some continued discussion around what's happening with a Skull potential rematch as well at some point between Skull and Shishkin. So, we felt that the route he's on is the best route. Stevie Nelson, I think, is a commercially bigger fight as well. And we think he's in a great position. It's not about Mbilli. Diego would fight anyone tomorrow, but it was about what suited at that time.
Do you think it's realistic, if he aligns himself correctly, a Canelo fight could happen at some point in the future? Or do you think with Canelo now, let's talk about that Crawford fight and the other leading names, with no disrespect to Diego, just the high profile names that he wants at this stage in his career, he can pick and choose who he wants to fight?
Yeah, look, Canelo's in that position, he can do what he wants. He's worked his way into that position. Kind of depends how long Saul wants to stay in the sport for as well. Whether it's 3 fights, whether it's 4 years. If it's 4 years, it's a different story. Diego's 23 years old. He's going to be in the sport for many more years to come. He's not in a rush, So if Canelo stays in the sport for another 4 years, maybe we'll see it, But I don't think you're going to see that in the instance of the next 3 fights. Maybe there's something happens with the belts. Maybe Diego gets a vacant opportunity. He's in a great position, and we've got to now build him at the right pace to give him that experience. So when he goes into those big fights, he's been involved in them. He would fight he's another one. He's like Dalton Smith. He would fight anyone tomorrow, and he's up for it. So let's see how things play out.
Dalton Smith versus Smith-Ouizza. Walid, not somebody who's going to be known on these shorts. So what are you expecting? What does Dalton have to do to make sure he doesn't overlook the challenge of his opponent?
I think that's the key. We've seen the levels Dalton's at. When he fought Zepeda, he stepped up massively in levels. And he's someone over the last 2 years, as I said in the press conference, has continued to build, continue to grow and develop. And he's in a great position. The key is, as you say, not overlooking the opponent in front of him. But a focus for him has always been to win that European belt. He knows how important it is to put a big performance in this weekend, and that is what you're going to see on Saturday night. He will be involved in huge fights. He'll be involved in world title fights within the year. I'm very confident of that.
140 division now, it's really starting to come together. We obviously just saw Haney Ramirez, Ryan Garcia, Rolly Romero announced the other day, amongst many other fights which are being mentioned. On stage, it was mentioned that you've had conversations in the past where Dalton said, I will fight Devin Haney, I'll fight Teofimo, etc. Were they just passing conversations, or were they actual talks?
No, I'm not saying they've been talks with Devin Haney. He has said, I'll fight Devin Haney tomorrow. Devin Haney's obviously WBC champion in recess. You've got Puello and Sandor Martin fight for the main belt on March 1st as well. When Liam Paro was looking for an opponent prior to the Richards Hitchens fight, Dalton said, I'll fight him tomorrow. He wanted to fight. He wants the big fights. He will honestly challenge anyone. Because he's not a loud, big, outspoken, brash character, he's not going out there saying, give me... But that's what he's telling us. He will fight anyone. And I believe you'll see him in these kind of fights very soon.
How far off, when you say soon, do you believe end of 2025 he's in that position?
Yeah, I think with his position with the WBC at number 2, he'll get ordered at some point soon for a mandatory obligation. Whether that's early part of 26, whether that's end of 25. There's lots going on in the division. There's lots of opportunity there. You've got Jack Catterall as well fighting Arnold Barboza for the WBO interim. There's a chance that could be elevated to the full title if Teofimo decides to move up, which has been spoken about previously. We've got Richardson Hitchens as well, obviously won the IBF title from Liam Power in December. Got opportunities with him. There's so many big fights in the 140 division, and I think you'll see Dalton involved in some of those.
With Dalton, what's been the most impressive thing that you've been happy with when you've followed his journey from the get-go, as you said earlier, Frank? What's been the most pleasing thing having seen?
I think seeing him progress through the ranks and doing what he wanted to do, win those belts, being involved as part of that journey. Sometimes you're involved and it doesn't always go to plan. To be honest with you, that's boxing. It's a hard sport. But being involved in something that so far has gone so well, there's been delays, there's been hiccups, but we're on such a good path, and he's so close now to getting to that point that we spoke about. And so to build him up to be involved in everything that's been done so far is enjoyable, because we can all talk, we can all sit there and say we're going to do things, from our side as well when we sit down with fighters, but to actually go and deliver upon it, that for me is key, and that's what I think we've done with Dalton Smith since he turned professional.
Next week, Frank, Azim fights Sergey Lipinets, obviously bringing Dalton into the equation. There's always been talk of them two crossing paths at some point. Do you think Dalton might want to put a bit more pressure on Adam to produce a bit more of an emphatic finish in his own fight if Dalton can go and produce something like that on Saturday?
No, I think that talk about Dalton Azim, I think the time when that fight was ordered was the time that fight could have happened, right? As in there and then, right? Dalton would have fought him there. I think Dalton's now in a position where he can challenge. He's ready to challenge for those world titles, and he's mandated. He will get himself into. So the Azim fight, and this is no disrespect to Azim, because I thought he looked brilliant against O'Hara Davis. I think he's a great fighter, but that's not what's in Dalton's sort of eye line right now, because he's stepped on from there. And I think if he wouldn't have had the injuries, you would have seen him step on even further, than we are now. So look, Azim's on his own path. We're not going to sit back and hold up Dalton Smith's career, waiting to just see what Azim decides to do. I think that can be a fight down the road. If Azim continues doing what he's doing, if Dalton Smith continues doing what he's doing, or it may not ever happen. Who knows? Maybe it never happens. Maybe,
don't say that, Frank.
Maybe one moves up, maybe one loses. Maybe that's the thing with boxing, isn't it? Sometimes you have an opportunity to make a fight and you miss it. It's not our fault. We were there. We were ready to go. He got pulled out. I'm not saying it was the wrong reasons they did it, but they did it, not us. So we'll see how things play out. But Dalton's on his own journey, his own path right now. As I say, Adam's a brilliant fighter. I'm sure got a massive future ahead of him, but he's not sort of in Dalton's view right now.
Just a couple of topics to wrap this up on, Frank. Eubank Jr-Benn, obviously we've seen Turkey El Sheikh mention April time they'll be getting it on. I've seen a lot of talk about the stadium. I've seen the Spurs stadium mentioned. The most likely place for that fight to land?
I think it would be perfect there. I think it's a great venue for it. So yeah, hopefully we can see it there. There's hopefully some news soon. A lot of work going on in the background. I'm just glad we got the fight over the line. It's been a long time coming. I've spoken about it for an awful lot of time. I was starting to bore myself about it.
Frank, I'm sure you've seen. There's always going to be some pessimistic comments towards it. Do you understand some of those who want to see more in terms of what happened with Conor and how the fight has become bigger, but because of everything that's happened in the last 2 years, not necessarily giving the sport a great look?
Look, I got to be honest, when people say they want to see more about the whole Conor situation, he did what they asked him to do. He went to a panel who are mandated to make a decision on these things, an independent panel who sit there and decide these things, specialists within this field, that talking about things that I don't know, you don't know, unless you're a specialist within the field. I'm not sure you are, Andy, but, and he went and did that, and he was cleared. Right? They decided. Without that, they're an independent panel who take these decisions, not the British Boxing Board of Control. It goes from the BBFC to UCAD to the NADP. NADP are the overarching people who decide. They made a decision. They cleared him. And they made that decision. So, I'm struggling to understand what more people want. What you want to see, all the evidence that was put forward. I don't understand it. You don't understand it. But the people you asked him to go and deal with it on, he dealt with it on. And they're happy with the outcome. So, we're kind of at an impasse where it's like we have to let that lie now. I'm not saying people will always be happy, and I'm also not saying people will always agree with everything that the process. We've sat there and said we could have done things better, could have done things differently. I think you can say you don't like the way it was handled. Do you know what I mean? I think you can say that. You can't say it hasn't been settled because it's been settled.
Rehydration clause, a lot of talk about that. I just want to get your thoughts on it, because I know in the past Conor's obviously saying any fight, any weight, what have you. Some people kind of question, well, if that's the case, why do we need a rehydration clause?
Yeah, I think the word rehydration, or using that term rehydration clause, a second day weigh-in is more apt, to use. That is what's used. The IBF do it for all of their fights all around the world. It's been on a number of fights, for huge fights over the years that have taken place. It's not just this independent fight that we've got that this has happened. So I think you've got to really use that term, because rehydration clause is not the term that's really used for it, being honest. I think in terms of when you look at the weight, Conor is the one stepping up 2 weight divisions. He's a natural 147. He's not even huge at 147, I wouldn't say. Chris has always been at 160, apart from a few fights at 168, but decided 160 is the weight for him. That's his natural weight. So no one's really talking about the fact Conor Benn's jumping up 2 weight divisions. He agreed to do it, just like Chris agreed to the terms of the fight. He's a grown-up. If he didn't want to agree to it, the fight wouldn't be happening. Do you get where I'm coming from? They've both come to terms on different things. The original fight was at 157. This one's at 160. Conor's moved there, so he's now 13 pounds heavier than his natural weight. But he has accepted that, just like Chris has accepted on the other side, and he wouldn't do it if he wasn't happy with it.
Just an update as well on Anthony Joshua. Frank, obviously we know who's looking at that Tyson Fury fight. Currently not getting that due to Tyson's retirement. So where do you sit in terms of trying to find AJ his next fight?
We got to sit down and focus on now what's next. We're getting back, back in the gym, training hard, and there's a lot going on in the heavyweight division as well. You've obviously got Daniel Dubois, Joseph Parker's on Feb 22nd as well. AJ's still in a great position, just being honest with you. Whether people want to hear that or not, when you look at the top 3 names, there's still Tyson Fury, who's retired, Alexander Usyk and Anthony Joshua in that mix of the names people need to fight to commercially be big draws. I'm just being honest, and I think we'll see how things play out. I hope to see AJ back out in the summer.
Take it, mentioning Deontay Wilder, is that a front runner for you? Or?
Personally, if you're asking me as an individual, I'm not Anthony Joshua. I think that as an amazing narrative, a story that's gone on for years, and a fight that would interest people. For so long, boxing, unfortunately, has been about wins, losses. I'm not saying wins aren't important, but it's about seeing great fights that engage the audience. And that, for example, is a fight that would engage the audience.
Last one from me, Frank. Next week you also have Benavidez versus Morrell. I just want to get your thoughts on that fight, because I'm sure the winner of Callum Smith, Joshua-Buatsi, will be keeping one eye on that. Yeah,
brilliant fight. I think Benavidez is a tremendous fight, but Morrell's obviously been around the game for a long time as well. Callum Smith, Joshua-Buatsi, a tremendous fight, Feb 22nd. Exciting times for that division. 175, there's so much going on and lots to look forward to. And the big Bivol-Beterbiev rematch. My man, Dimitri Bivol, going to go in there, become undisputed champion. He deserves it.
Thank you, Frank.
Cheers, mate.